Hi everyone, and welcome to my guide for the self-cast Forbidden Rite Occultist. This is a build that I have played in Softcore Trade League Archnemesis up to level 98, and I had a blast with this and want to share my thoughts and my experience with this for you guys to also enjoy the build maybe. So I have done pretty much all the endgame content. I have done the Maybe Invitations, Elder Guardians, Shaper Guardians, all the memories, etc. Including the Feared, also Deathless. So this has been working out pretty well. Even though there's not even a bossing build, you have Profim, Bloom, Explosions, so obviously you want to mostly focus on mapping with a character like this, but bossing still works, and with the right investment they melt pretty quickly. The investment for my character here was actually rather high, so in total I spent roughly 40 exalts for this. You can definitely make it work with much less, especially if you don't care at all about doing the Feared or something like that. If you just want to go blast the T16 maps, you can do this with way less than this. I think that maybe the lower end where it will start feeling comfortable is maybe around 10-15 exalts or so. And then with more investment, you can make it even tankier, you can give it even more damage, and it's gonna feel great in every single scenario. I even went all the way to Simulacrum Wave 30 with my character, so it is definitely doable. It's not exactly a Simulacrum farmer, at least not with my investment, but I believe that if you make it even tankier and give it some more damage, it can also do that quite comfortably at some point. For me, it was still a struggle after like wave 25 or so, but overall the build has definitely performed really well. It has turned out to be quite tanky, and it has insane amount of recovery with all the different life gain on hit and regeneration abilities thrown in there. So it has definitely felt really great. And for example, the journey from level 97 to 98 I have done with only a single death, and even running pretty tough maps has turned out to be quite easy with this. It is quite fast. You have flame dashes galore from the Badge of the Brotherhood with cooldown reduction for your movement skills. And other than that, you just run around, you shoot once, the entire screen pops. So it feels amazing. So here I'm gonna give you the overview of my character and the passive tree and how I build it to make it feel comfortable and perform pretty well. So this is the passive tree. Essentially, it picks up a lot of life nodes, and this is almost about it. So you just travel to all the life you can grab basically as a witch. And there is a bit of chaos stuff here from the Corruption and Heart of Darkness cluster. This is quite powerful. Then there is the Disciple of the Forbidden, which is also very powerful. And we pick up the cluster jewels here to make sure that we can throw in all these Born of Chaos small clusters that gives you +3 maximum chaos resistance. This is very important because we convert elemental damage taken to chaos damage taken. And with more chaos resistance, we also reduce the incoming damage from the Forbidden Rite itself, because it deals a lot of damage to yourself, and if you don't have a lot of chaos res, you will die very quickly. Other than this, we pick up all the power charges that we can. So we don't travel over to the Shadow, but we anoint this one, and then you have the Witch one, and you have the Templar one, and there's also an Endurance charge. Here's a bit of reduced crit damage taken from crits and extra armor. This is actually extremely powerful 4 points here that I added towards the end, because you cannot lose energy shield. So you're always at not low energy shield and always have this 120% armor effect active because of the Divine Flesh notable. So this is an extremely nice tech here for this build, and I could really notice the effect, especially once I had stacked some armor on the items. So I was running around with around 20k armor or so without flasks, and then when we pop the flasks, it got up to like 40k something. And this is really noticeable when you have 120% of armor at all times. My items look like this. There are a few specific pieces that kind of glue the whole build together. First of all, we have the Void batteries for the power charge scaling. So as occultists, we get a power charge, we pick up all the power charges on a tree, and we have those. So in the end, we have a lot of power charges. I think it goes up to 9. I also have a synthesized helm here. This doesn't have to be synthesized, but it was a quite cheap solution. I got the base for something like 100C or so. And then I just threw some essence on this, had some good life roll and some res roll. That was it. So pretty nice. but you can also get a power charge here from an influenced helm. I think it's Redeemer, so this would probably be the optimal choice. Or you take another helm here and get a Forbidden Rite enchant. That is also fine. Here's the badge of the Brotherhood. Because we have all these power charges, we also gain an equal amount of frenzy charge maximum. So this is extremely useful when you have 9 or 10 power charges already. Suddenly you have a lot of frenzy charges that give you up to 40% more damage. And it also has some other nice bonuses like the cooldown recovery rate for your movement skills. And with this you can actually flame dash around like hell. And you can really notice it coming back in seconds. And this actually makes a build pretty quickly, especially when you have to backtrack a little bit or you already know the direction you're going. You can just zap around the entire map, even without a lot of movement speed. So these are the 3 core uniques that make this whole setup. There are some influenced items, especially one ring and the chest, that you want to look out for. So my chest here, this was by far the most expensive piece of the setup. This one cost me 13 exals, I believe it was. So the most important mod on your body armor is gonna be the frenzy charge on hit, because we have this insane amount of frenzy charge maximum. We want to generate them somehow, especially on bosses. This is a Redeemer mod. And then you can also combine this with some other stuff, like the additional curse, which gives us the assassin's mark on bosses, and also the spell crit. So these help you for just more boss DPS. You don't really need this, so you can get away with just the frenzy charge on hit and have a rather cheap body armor. But if you want to boost your endgame DPS, especially for something like the Feared, or if you want to do something like Simulacrums or whatever, you will definitely have to invest here. This is going to be one of those expensive pieces if you want to boost your damage. Other than this, I also have a ring that has the spare on hit. So the spare on hit can also be acquired from other sources, but the ring is probably the best option here. You could get some corrupted gloves or something, but on the other hand, you also want specific implicits on your gloves, especially the chaos damage leeches life. So I wouldn't really recommend that, and rather just go for a ring here. This is a hunter mod as well. And you don't need to have this life gain for each enemy hit by your spells. I was actually kind of overkilling it with healing, I would say, at least from my personal experience of the build. I think I had too much healing and I could have just gone for probably a better ring without these like double influenced stats here on the ring. Just the curse would have been fine in my opinion. All the other stuff is basically just scaling as much armor as possible, getting all the resists, getting all the stats, the attributes to actually wear all the items. So you gotta be careful. You need to have a quite high strength amount. For example, if you wear an Astral Blade, which you most likely will with an influenced body armor like this. So this needs 180 strength. Otherwise, it's 155 to use your Molten Shell, for example, at the maximum level. And we also need 111 dexterity, which I perfectly hit here. So this is what you have to go for. Intelligence, you'll generally just stack up enough anyway, but Void Battery also has a pretty steep requirement of 245. So you might have to pay a little bit attention to intelligence as well. On top of this, you want to stack up a lot of life wherever you can. This build scales the damage with its life as well, because Forbidden Rite gives extra damage for a bigger life pool. It is definitely one of the defensive layers of the build and also visible on the tree. This is essentially only life nodes here. At this point, I can also highlight this little section with the nodes. So I did a little write-up here, the basics, defensive layers, playstyle, mana management and health management, and also my stats that I had in the end. So for example, I had 46% damage taken recouped as life, which is very useful for all the self damage that you do to yourself with Forbidden Rite. So 30% comes from this wheel here. And then I also had the ring. So this is just a random stat that you can roll on the ring. So a ring like this here can definitely help out. You don't need this. Again, I was definitely overkilling it with the healing, but it was definitely nice to have more healing than necessary. So potentially you can drop the ring mod, or you can drop this 3 points here on the tree. But it was definitely feeling great that when you take damage, you automatically heal it up. You heal it up when you cast Forbidden Rite. And in general, you just had so much life recovery with the leech, with the life gain on hit, that it just felt great to survive basically anything that the maps would throw at me. Other than this, I had 47 life gain on spell hit, so this was mostly from the Watcher's Eye jewel. So I had a Watcher's Eye that is very basic. So this was my Watcher's Eye, just has a bit of life, a bit of mana, and then this Vitality mod with the life gain for each enemy hit. So this is also a way of sustaining, and this can obviously be way improved with a much more expensive Watcher's Eye if you want. You can get a combo, for example, with Stellar Tree for extra damage, and then you can actually get more out of this slot as well. Right now, this doesn't give any damage whatsoever. Mana regen is definitely quite important, so I did this with Clarity. I also had some flat mana regen, for example, from an Unveiled mod here, with life and mana from June. And for example, I also had a bit of mana regen here in the Stygian Vise. So there is definitely some options like that to stack some mana regen. Maybe you can get a % mana regeneration rate roll on the rings. But in general, you definitely want to make sure that you reach decent amounts of mana regen. This can definitely be neglected a little bit early on. For example, you can run with a mana flask. You can maybe even turn off an aura. So I have a few like mentions here. But you definitely want to invest into mana regen and also reduced mana cost of skills. Most importantly, the two sources are the boot enchant. So this is 18%, which is very nice already. And secondly, there's the anomalous greater multiple projectile support, which also gives 20% reduced cost. So those two go together and make a big part of the whole thing already. And then you can try to stack up some more reduced mana cost. For example, from some jewels. So I had something like this here, 4% reduction, and maybe you can fit in like another one somewhere. Here's 5%. So I just use these jewels for decent amount of stats, bit of life, bit of reduced mana cost, nothing crazy, quite cheap actually. And this helped me out a great deal as well. And also very important, as I had mentioned earlier, the Bone of Chaos small clusters for the 3% maximum chaos res. So I had 2 here. I would say 3 would be even better. I could have done like another one here, for example, but in the end, my setup was fine and I didn't really want to swap it out anymore. And on top of this, it's also quite hard to actually make choices to get more points here. So I had this Megalomaniac, but it didn't really have anything special besides the Enduring Composure, which if you don't have this, you just have one small armor cluster with Enduring Composure to give you the endurance charges. I used this here for a bit of extra life, bit of extra res to fix my problems. And then you could put another small cluster here as well and get even more chaos res. You already get a lot from Withering Presence as an occultist. So here's 60 flat res. So it's not that hard to scale chaos res, but you still have to, watch out, maybe have 1 or 2 items on your character as well. But you do get a bit of chaos res here from the small clusters. So this already puts you close to a cap, and then make sure that you get the rest somewhere on your items. So much for the tree and the character. Let's take a look at the skills themselves. So here's the Forbidden Rite 6 link. So we have Forbidden Rite, power charge on crit. With 10 power charges, you get a huge multiplier here. You have Pinpoint. Pinpoint is really nice because you fire more projectiles and then you increase the damage on the single target if you keep casting. So very useful. We combine this with Anomalous greater multiple projectiles. You can go with normal GMP as well, but then you will have probably a bit more trouble with the mana costs. But if you can manage, then this is fine. Anomalous can cost a little bit. And lastly, critical damage support and void manipulation support. I had the Awakened version here. This one was quite cheap, so I just put it in there. And it gives +1 to the supported Chaos skill gems, which is a pretty nice damage upgrade over the regular one. Our aura links is most importantly Determination, Defiance banner for the big armor, goes together with the Val Molten Shell, so you can use this as a big defensive cooldown and the normal Molten Shell whenever you want. Here's the Stellar Tree, gives extra damage, and the Consecrated Ground as well for extra healing, very useful. Here's the Vitality, you can keep it at level 1, it's mostly there for the Watcher's Eye effect, for the life gain on hit. Here's the Clarity. So you want to have it probably at a rather high level, but you can fine tune this a little bit. For example, I didn't need more mana regen at some point, so I just put it to level 15 and stopped there. So this can actually be adjusted a little bit depending on how your mana looks and how much mana regen you need. Here is one of the cast and damage taken setups. This is Ball Lightning, cast and damage taken. The main reason to include this in the build is for life gain on hit. So again, from the Vitality Watcher's Eye, you want to hit many targets, and when you are surrounded by enemies, you actually instantly heal the fall from all these Ball Lightning sapping everything. So again, we have an anomalous greater multiple projectiles if you want to afford a second one, but it does also help with the mana a little bit. For me, this was probably overkill, but I just left it there. And there's also Onslaught here. So this can sometimes give you Onslaught on the boss. It's not really that consistent. You could also replace this with something else, like another spell or another support. For example, you can do Culling Strike there. If you want to cull enemies, especially bosses, this might be useful. Or you can put something like Cold Snap in there if you don't have the Frenzy Charge on hit yet on the chest. So at least you can get Frenzy Charges while killing enemies. There are a few options here. Here's the mobility, Flame Dash, Second Wind. You have 4 dashes, it recharges really fast. It's amazing with Badge of the Brotherhood. And there's also Withering Stab, which you can press once or twice when you engage a boss. So usually I just use that as a little damage cooldown, together with my flask, obviously. And I also had Focus on my belt. So this is a quite useful craft, especially when you don't have insane crit chance. So as long as you don't have something like 80-90% plus, this is quite useful and a quite efficient DPS upgrade. So for 4 seconds, your crit chance is lucky, can give you something like 20-30% effective DPS during that window, which might be enough to just nuke down the boss entirely. Lastly, here's another cast and damage taken link. So this is for the Assassin's Mark, which you can only use once you have the second curse. So when you have a chest that has the Frenzy Charge on hit and the additional curse, then you have the Assassin's Mark. Otherwise, yeah, you can't use it yet. And here's also a Purifying Flame for more consecrated ground and the Arcane Surge. And if you can get the Divergent Purifying Flame, this also helps you out with more damage taken to the enemy. If you don't have a Despair on hit ring yet, early on, then you can probably just replace the Assassin's Mark here in this setup and have a low level Despair that you proc all the time from cast and damage taken. Or you replace the Purifying Flame if you have the 2 curses already. And that's it for the entire setup. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I have the PoE in the description with the tree, with my items. You can all check it out here and also look at the values and try to make a similar setup for yourself if you like, or maybe tweak it to your own liking. As I mentioned, there are also these notes here that give you a bit of like a basic overview, some little tweaks that you can do, and also my own character stats to give you a bit of like a pointer of what to look for. And with this, we're gonna conclude the video. So hope you liked it, and I see you guys next time.